smoky and savory. Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video I'm going to do a review of the Balvenie, the Week of Peat. This is from a 2002 14-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey. An absolutely spectacular whiskey. Now they've got another bottle that came out before this, which was called Peat Week. So if you're watching this review and you want to go buy one, don't get them confused. I haven't tried Peat Week, but from what I have read, it's not as peaty and has like a different character. Even though it's also a 14-year-old and has the same basic profile in terms of how they made the whiskey, it's different and it's not as quite the same as this one. So if after watching this review, trust me, you're going to want to get a bottle of the Week of Peat. But before I get into this, here are my notes. The Balvenie, the Week of Peat 14-year-old, is made from 100% malted barley. It's aged at least 14 years. Next, bourbon cask. It is non-chill filtered, has natural color, bottled at 48.3% alcohol by volume, and sells for about $100 in my neighborhood. All right, so peated whiskey can have a lot of different characteristics coming from that peat. People think, oh, peat, oh, it's smoke, oh, it's fire, or it's medicinal, or it's depending on a number of different factors, the peat can really come across in different ways. First of all, where is the peat from? Is it from the island? Is it from the mainland? So the components that actually went into the decaying organic matter is going to affect the characteristic of the peat. The temperature of the peat in which it was smoldering or burning is going to affect the flavor of the peat. So it's a fast smoking or a slow smoking, right? The distillation, the rate of distillation, where they do the cuts, right, from the heads and the hearts and the tails, particularly the tails, is going to have a huge impact on it. And of course, aging. Not all, but many whiskeys, as they get older that have been peated, lose some of the peaty characters. It starts to dissipate as it gets older. However, now I've also had a few 25-year-old Lafroigs that were plenty peaty. They hadn't lost a whole lot, but some of them do. Now, the end result is that whatever the ppms were when you first started, but it's 55 or 150, is somewhat relevant because they measure the ppms typically before they've fermented, distilled, and aged, and so forth. So what's really helpful, and I don't see that often, is when a distillery will tell you what the ppms was before distillation and then after distillation, so you can see how much you lose in the transition. Now, the different peated whiskeys, and depending on how the whiskey is made can give you a really different character of the peat. Some really come across as super chocolatey, and I love those, and those can be really, really delicious. Some come across a little bit more medicinal and iodine and seaweed and very oceanic, right? You think of Lafroig, some Arbegs can be like that as well. And then some come across more as barbecue meat. And that is exactly what this one is like. So it's got a real nice honey character, some apples, some pears. And it doesn't come across with any medicinal notes, any oceanic character, although it's got a little bit of saltiness going on there. But really what you get is that savory barbecued meat character. It does have a little bit of chocolate, not a ton, a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of nuttiness. So that little bit of that chocolate and nuttiness can remind you a little bit of like a Reese's Pieces or Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, but that's not a major player in the profile of this whiskey. The major player in the profile of this whiskey, Peter Powder pick up peppers. Yeah, that's all, folks. The major player in this whiskey is those meaty, savory notes. The fruit is up front, that smoky, savory character is sort of in the middle, and that saltiness just sort of kicks in the back with a little bit of that nuttiness. All right, on the palate. Now, this is a whiskey that needs some patience. You hear me say this. If you've been watching me before, you hear me say this a lot. You don't judge a bottle by neck pour. But of all the various types of whiskeys that seem to benefit the most from some aeration is peated whiskeys. They seem to have the greatest arc of change going past the neck pour and into the body. You know, your bourbons, yeah, they might change a little bit. Sherry, whiskeys, a little bit. But peated whiskeys really benefit. And at first, some bottles can seem offensive or they can seem muted because it almost seems like the smoke wants to be the first thing to sort of rush out of the bottle. And you have to kind of be patient and wait for the fruit characteristics to come out of it. And this is no exception. And the more I'm getting into this, the more I'm falling absolutely in love with this whiskey. It starts off sweet with some nice honey notes, the apples and the pears and all that. In the mid palate, you get the savoriness, almost like a barbecue meat. You take a tri-tip and you put brown sugar on it, and then you put some kosher salt, and then you take all kinds of herbs and spices out of your cupboard, and you make a real nice rub, and then you put it on the grill. That is what you're getting in the middle of it. And then on the back end, you're getting just a little bit of that Reese's peanut butter cup on the tail end, so it gets a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of nuttiness, and a little bit of saltiness. So it's got a really nice development, a really great evolution. I would say the sweet and the savory have almost, I would say, like a perfect balance. And they are both playing well. Neither one competes with the other, and they don't cover each other up. So it's a really well-balanced whiskey. The development is absolutely fantastic, and I love that sweet, salty, savory finish. The only thing I would like to see, just kind of think it'd be interesting, they're using bourbon casks. I would like to see them do the exact same thing, but use a sherry cask. Because one of my personal favorites is smoky, sweet, salty, savory, and sherry. Those are the 5 S's that I really like. But don't get me wrong, this is absolutely superb. But if they happen to be watching and you look for another idea, the way of doing this whiskey, let's try a sherry cask. I think it'd be just absolutely spectacular. Alrighty, what am I going to give in terms of score? I'm going to go solid 90 points. Solid 90 points. So if you can get one of these, now $100, oh, I know $100, because there are a lot of other peated whiskeys that I like, the $50 to $70 range that are absolutely fantastic, really enjoyable. The $100, man, that's getting up there, I know, particularly for a lot of people. But if there's a particular profile of a whiskey, you don't want the super chocolatey one. You don't want the medicinal one. You don't want, the smack upside the head of smoke and brininess and oceanic character. You want something on the savory side. This fits that niche of a peated whiskey. This is what you're going to want. So if you want to have a nice collection, a selection of peated whiskeys, in which you're going to have different types of peated whiskeys of different profiles, and you're looking for one for that savory character, boom, this is one that you're going to want to look for. Absolutely fantastic. Alrighty, if you like watching my videos and reviews, I'm going to ask that you subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I go live. And if you are one of my Patreons, I want to thank you very much for supporting this channel. All right, until next time, cheers.